I think Rick thinks it's a really good sign because we're going to start off winners and losers today, day 2 at the Combine with Latu. And Rick Spielman, that is your pick for a winner today. Why is that?
Yeah, because he's one of the top edge rushers. When you look at Dallas Turner, Jared Verse, this may be the most polished pass rusher out of all of them with his length, with his athleticism. It wasn't a question of how high he was going to go in the first round, only based off of medical and who was going to be able to pass that. And when he told us on stage today that he was in there very quickly, and what I said, that's a very good thing, but it could be a bad thing too. If he's passing all these physicals like we think he is, then he's going to go very high. He could be a top 10 pick before it's said and done.
So let me ask you this, Rick, and when we talk about Latu, I told you after he left the set today, because he's incredibly energetic, you saw some of that clip, only Henry To'oTo'o was more energetic on set. It felt like he was having fun. It felt like he felt extremely lucky to be in this position. How important is that when a player says, I play every play like it's my last because I've been through some serious adversity? When you talk about someone going into the rookie season, year 2, year 3, and knowing that they're going to show up day in and day out?
Yeah, because football was taken away from him. And if it's not important to him, he went and came back and played the way he played. So sometimes when you get something taken away from you that you love and you have an opportunity to gain it back, you have a much better appreciation for it, and I think he showed that on this year's tape.
And Hassel, that's true, because when Rick was working for the Commanders and he got to come back to the podcast, he had never been more gracious and more happy to see me. That's since changed, but for a few days it was great. All right, Rick, what's your loser?
My loser is the people, Pete Prisco, the people that think that read too much into the statement that
Caleb Williams made
about
the Bears,
wanting to be with the Bears. He was very politically correct, and the reason I'm saying is don't read too much into it. People in Chicago, I heard you talk to some of the fans there, they were ecstatic that he wants to play for the Chicago Bears. It didn't have to be a strong statement, but he also had to balance that line, because what if Chicago does trade out and it came across too strong that, hey, I love the Bears, I only want to play for the Bears. Someone moves up to get him. He wants them to know that he'll play for anyone in the NFL, and I think this was a very positive statement, not only for the Chicago Bears, but for any other team that may try to come up and get him.
And the other thing, we just spoke yesterday when the GMs and coaches were speaking, and you did this for more than a decade. You never said anything on the podiums behind us when people were asking you questions, and basically Caleb Williams is doing the same thing. Why are we grading him differently?
Because he's the #1 pick in this year's draft, and he's a future franchise quarterback.
So everything he says matters.
Everything he says is going to get magnified. So everybody wants to read too much into what he says, but I thought he handled it perfectly today.
I would say this. If he had come out and said, under no circumstances will I play for Chicago, he's still going to be the first overall pick, though.
Yeah, but it may not be for the Bears.
It may not be for the Bears. All right, my winner, Rick, a young man that we talked about in the fall, and we finally got a chance to meet. He was actually another fun interview today. Braden Fiske, the defensive lineman out of Florida State, transferred from Western Michigan, played with Jared Verse on the same side of the defense usually this year in the fall for the Seminoles. Fantastic Senior Bowl. Great fall. One of the highest energy players we saw. You asked him about having short arms potentially, and he said, the coach once told me just be A+ at something, and his A+ is his motor and his get off and consistently winning, and you see it here. We both liked him a lot. What are one of the things that you like the most about the way Braden Fiske plays?
He's overcoming one of his shortcomings, and he knows it. He's not making an excuse for it. He knows that, I believe he measured 31-inch arm length, what may be a death wish for some people on a defensive lineman because of that lack of arm length. But the one thing he did say was that I have to be special in some other area of my game to make up for that lack of arm length.
And he is special in a lot of other areas. I don't know what he weighed, but he's 280+, I think, maybe more than that.
He's going to be one of those guys that maybe you don't want him to be the first guy off the bus, but you want him to be the first guy on the field because he's a heck of a football player.
That's right, as I lose my voice laughing at your joke. By the way, Chris,
I'm serious.
I asked Braden what one of the shows he'd been binging. He watches a lot of Ozark. To me, and he turns to Rick and goes, this guy definitely watched a lot of MASH, which I thought was a fantastic way to end the interview. So, and Rick's like, yeah, I did watch a lot of MASH. That's the only thing we had on one of the 3 channels.
We only had 3 channels when I was growing up, and MASH was on one of them.
Only went off the air
all right, let's get to my loser.
Yeah, Ryan, go ahead with your loser.
Not wrong, Chris. Not wrong. So my loser, other than Rick watching a lot of MASH, is the Chiefs. And they're hardly a loser, Rick, because we talked to Andy Reid yesterday, and they just came off a Super Bowl. They've won 2 now in the last few years here. But they can't keep Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed. There's conversations that maybe they'll have to trade L'Jarius Sneed if they tag him and trade him, or move on from him at the very least. Is that at all a concern in a division where Jim Harbaugh's coming to town? That Chargers team is going to be better. The Raiders have a top 15 pick. If they get a quarterback, they're going to be in the conversation as well, given how well they played under Antonio Pierce. Or does it not matter because you have Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce?
Well, they have that, but they also have Brett Veach, who's been excellent at drafting secondaries. And when they won a Super Bowl against the Philadelphia Eagles, how many of those rookies on the back end, including All-Pro McDuffie, helped them win a Super Bowl? So I wouldn't be as concerned as a loser because I have a lot of confidence in Brett Veach, their general manager, and how well he is drafted for the Kansas City Chiefs. So if they do lose a guy, me personally, I think they're going to be a loser if they lose Chris Jones because he's such a dominant interior defensive lineman. They can play up and down the line, and if they lose him, that's going to be too big a hole to fill.
All right, I'll ask you this quickly. Outside of the Chiefs, any other team in that division make the playoffs next year?
Well, right now, all 32 teams are making the playoffs, if you ask any of them.
And Chris, that's why he watches MASH.
Chiefs are getting buried today, by the way. Yeah, Ryan's got him as a loser. You got the NFL's second annual Players Association team report cards, and the Chiefs ranked second to last overall on that with the last place owner. Rick, is there anything to this, just the second year of these team report cards?
Yeah, I think it is important because that may have some influence on the type of free agents that you're going to sign. And do you want to go in that situation? Now, Kansas City's different because it may be rated number 31, but I also know I could get a ring on my finger playing with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes.
And to be clear, it's not a reflection on Clark Hunt, the owner. It's a reflection on the facilities. Is that more the point?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are added into that. But the other thing that I will say is the Washington Commanders, and with new ownership and Josh Harris, things will change there. I know that it was a little different under Dan Snyder, and everybody's talked about that situation. But knowing Josh Harris, having the fortunate ability to work through that coach's search and that GM search, getting to know Josh Harris a little bit, he is the right owner for the Commanders and will do everything he can, including stadium and facility, to make that one of the top franchises in the NFL.
And Chris, before the NFLPA survey was a thing, there was another measurement of how good organizations were. And Rick's Minnesota Vikings routinely ranked near the top, so he was doing something right too.
You must be scared of him, though. Are you aware that you're like sitting as far away as you possibly can in that chair? You're like way over to the side. There's like 3 feet of room on the side of the chair next to Rick Spielman while Rick's right in the middle of his. I hope you get cozy, though, because you've got a podcast coming up in just a few minutes. They'll be recording a new one each and every day from the Combine in Indy with the First Pick podcast with Ryan Wilson and Rick Spielman.